you are saying that women are promiscuous and it's making women upset and you're worried about the well-being of women. And then you also in the same breath are saying that they are only swiping right on 10% of the profiles that they see. So
Jake, is your complaint that women aren't
possible?
swiping on, do you want women to swipe on more men? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like what's the solve here?
Yeah, like I think generally like the West or whatever, like North America, I mean, I don't think Canada is that different than the US in terms of culture, but I do think we live in a promiscuity culture, and I also think we live in not a hookup culture because most men aren't actually hooking up with women. So you have maybe like 10% of men who are hooking up with like 90% of the women.
When I was listening to this for the first time, I already knew it wasn't going to go over well because it sounds like such a generic red pill thing to say. But when it comes to dating apps, that very much seems to be the case. And you've probably seen charts floating around like this in the past. While I don't think the 90-10 rule applies in real-life interactions, and by 90-10, I mean 90% of women only wanting the top 10% of men. Due to the frivolous nature of online dating, that's how things seem to play out.
And that's actually really sad because
do you have resources for that?
Like I don't have them on me. But
that's like those are massive numbers that I would definitely need to see something for.
Yeah, like if you look at like statistics, like for example, like Bumble and Tinder, like you would see that like the findings that they came out with was that the majority of men swiped right on women, but the majority of women only swiped right on like 10% of the men. Or something really low, like maybe even lower.
Is that women are more picky with their choice?
That feels like it would be that feels like it would make for the opposite result. Like they would be seeing less people than the men are because the men are just swiping on freaking anybody.
The reason why men swipe right on just about anyone is because their best bet when it comes to online dating is to play the numbers game. For every 100 times a guy swipes right, he'd be lucky to get 1 or 2 matches, which most likely won't amount to anything.
Yeah, and that doesn't tell us how many people are actually hooking up or anything. But I want to go back to what you initially said. You said you think that this is a promiscuous culture. And that's an interesting word to use right off the bat. But I want to know what you think. Like, how are you defining promiscuous?
Like basically like sleeping with like multiple partners without actually being in a committed relationship. Or like a marriage, but like I wouldn't even say marriage. I would just say like a committed relationship.
Why is
so you think this is you're saying this is a culture? Yeah, are you saying that's a wrong choice, or are you just saying, oh, we're in a culture now where people have sex outside of marriage?
I mean, we are in a culture where people that have sex outside marriage. We also are in a culture where people have sex outside a committed relationship, where people are having sex with multiple partners.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
Why is that a bad thing, though?
Why? Well, first off, I mean, there's multiple reasons, but like for women, there are also studies for women that they don't end up. They end up getting divorced later on in life because
why is
they slept with a lot of men.
But also, you said women.
If I had to give one quick reason as to why I think divorce is bad, it's because it can leave people in financial ruin. And when people want to play dirty in divorce court, it's pretty much a free-for-all. Not all divorces end well. And when you see this stuff online, it's usually the worst of the worst cases. But that doesn't mean change isn't needed in this area, so people are better protected when or if their marriage falls apart.
You also said women get divorced. It's 2 people getting divorced.
who's divorcing?
No, but the women are. You're right. You're right about the 2 people. But women actually initiate divorce like 75% of the time, or 80% of the time.
Why is that bad? As a woman who has initiated divorce multiple times.
You're breaking up families. you're breaking up families.
I didn't break up. I didn't break up any families. And why is that bad?
No, not you.
Also,
not you. I'm saying like the women who get divorced.
Even though I'm not religious at all, I still recognize and appreciate what marriage means, or at least meant in the past. If you're willing to have multiple divorces, why get married in the first place? People are quick to say, "Till death do us part," and all that. But when it comes down to it, they're not ready or willing to stick by those words. If divorces didn't come with the risk of someone losing up to half of everything they worked for, maybe I'd think differently about it.
right. So what's better for a woman to stay in an unhealthy marriage that she does not want to be in, that's not good for her? And we have studies to show how awful that is for children to also have to witness. What's worse, for her to stay in that just for kids, just so we can use this really interesting phrase of breaking up a family, which makes it sound so much more dramatic. Oh, we're actually transitioning out of something that was not working into something healthier. So like how do you determine what's happening? Are you breaking up a family or are you transitioning to a healthier situation because this situation is no longer serving the family?
I agree with Eve on this. If things are that bad in your marriage, it doesn't make sense to keep things going just because you don't want to break up the family. Eventually, that unhappiness will start to show up in various ways, and some of that may even be felt by the children. For example, one or both parents might find themselves constantly in a bad mood. They might start neglecting their partner and the kid over time, or they could simply start having an affair. I mean, Reddit's full of stories like that.
Oh, the situation is no longer serving the family for sure. I mean, like
right. So then divorce is good.
No, divorce is bad. Definitely.
Why is divorce
because the children are being affected, and there's also other reasons. I mean, when women get older, do you think that children
are affected? Do you think that children are affected by divorce, but not by bad relationships being played out in front of them?
Like, I think children at a very young age are traumatized by divorce.
But they can be traumatized by their parents consistently fighting, or God forbid, they find out that one of their parents is hooking up with someone else, which probably happens more than we'd care to admit.
But when they get older,
children are traumatized by bad relationships too. Where relationships where they don't see positive, healthy communication and intimacy, like not intimacy, sex, intimacy, like hugging and whatever. Children who don't see that modeled, affection, who don't see that modeled in their homes have an extremely hard time being able to perform those actions later in life. Even when they're friendly and they have nothing to do with their romantic relationships, they have a hard time having those actions be a part of their life. And then later in life, when they get to their romantic relationships, it's almost impossible. So why would I put a child in a situation where I'm going to make their future so much harder?
Having seen this exact thing play out in my own life, I completely agree.
Because they have not seen a healthy relationship model.
You're advocating for people to just not get married, because that would be better.
For some couples who go through horrible divorces, not getting married may very well have been a much better option for them.
No, I'm not. That's not what I said at all. I just think that when a man and a woman gets divorced, it does break up the family. And another thing too is that the divorce rates are the highest it's ever been throughout history.
Yeah, because yes, can I tell you why? It's because women actually have financial independence and they don't have to stay in marriages that are harmful to them anymore.
Which is true. Since women make up half of the workforce now, they can survive on their own, which makes leaving a marriage much easier. The problem with this, though, is that we still have old laws in place that can completely screw over the partner who's earning more, which in most cases, at least for now, is the guy. Since everyone has the ability to pull their own weight and make it on their own, I think this whole spousal support and alimony thing needs a bit of an update.
So when I was in a marriage and it was really harmful for me,
how do you know?
Thankfully, I was able to leave.
I don't know why I did this over my sweatshirt like that. That was really stupid.
Sure, but how do you know that the women in the early 1900s were miserable in their marriage? Where's the evidence for that? Because I don't see it.
I have no idea. Maybe they weren't, and maybe men just were way better back then, and maybe they suck now, and that's why we're leaving them. I don't know. I have no idea.
So you don't know. Okay, so I mean, I'm proposing like an idea. I do think that promiscuity is one of the reasons why women are leaving men. So,
Why is that bad?
Say more about that.
well, put it this way. Like, I mean, look at our current environment, like Instagram and Tinder and like all these dating apps. I mean, you're like, it's basically like a global market. Like, women are able to find men anywhere in the world that they find attractive.
But men
most
can
of the
also
women
find,
are going.
most men can also find women anywhere in the world that they find attractive.
She's right. Men can do that. But the thing is, a lot of guys find it hard to attract women who are local to them. So trying to get with some bad babe overseas usually isn't going to work out, unless you're the type of guy who's already smooth with women. But this brings us back to the whole situation on dating apps.
It
That's
doesn't go
right,
one
but
way.
most of those women are not. But most of those women are going after the top 10% of men. So
Why
what
shouldn't
happens is it just ends with.
Why should
Sorry?
Why shouldn't
Why
they?
shouldn't they?
That just feels like the other men who are, for whatever reason,
Well, first,
being
I mean, okay, so there's multiple problems to that. First off, like, they're not going to be in a relationship because you're going to have all, like, the top 10% of men can't be in a relationship with 90% of women, right? They're going to have to, like, swap them out, basically. And what happens is women end up getting heartbroken. So if you have multiple women sleeping with fewer men, that means that most women are going to not be in a committed relationship with men.
First of all, I would love to see statistics showing this, because so far this is just trust me.
But it's just math.
But second of all, why is that bad? Why is that bad? It sounds like you're complaining that women are doing what they want to do.
It can be bad for a number of reasons, at least when this sort of thing has happened in the past. Sometimes, we like to forget that we're animals. Just like lions, dogs, and cats, we have our base instincts. It's just that our brains are powerful or smart enough to override or tame some of those desires. But they're still there. Even though our societies are much bigger than they were thousands of years ago, there's still a risk involved if the majority of men find themselves lacking sexual access. If a large enough pool of men were to find themselves sexless, there may be an increase in violence, social instability, marginalization, and the rising of subgroups, which is something we're already seeing, a lack of social connections, and population decline. While it's easy to say something like men should just do better, at the end of the day, we're animals, we have base desires, and they're not so easy to ignore. As things are now in the dating world, it often feels like men and women are at odds with each other about what they want. And until people can really start seeing things from another person's perspective, these sorts of conversations aren't going to go anywhere.
Okay, so I mean, like, women are just going to sleep with a guy, and then he's not going to be in a committed relationship with her, and then she's just going to sleep with the next guy. If she doesn't want to be,
if she wants to,
so she's going to be alone all her life. She's not going to have a partner that's going to take care of her kids.
If she doesn't
want to tell you something. I love being single. I think it is so amazing. It's my biggest irritation with my boyfriend is that I love him, because it's like I would just love to be single.
I just wanted to say, I have a friend who works in therapy, and one thing he said to me not so long ago is that there's nothing sadder than working with or seeing all these old people who have nobody. All this "I love being single" talk is cute when you're young, but as you get older, you start to appreciate the company of others a lot more. With the way things are going now, we're going to have a lot of old and lonely people.
Women like being alone. A lot of women actually love that. I know I have so many women friends who are happy to just like have some situationships when they want, or maybe date somebody for a year, and they are very happy to be alone most of the time. They have their own house, they have a career, some of them have children. So can you tell me why? Basically, all I'm hearing from you is women are doing what they want, and I don't like it because it's not working out for me.
No,
I gave
you, no, it's not because I don't like it. It's actually the well-being of women that are being impacted by this promiscuity culture.
Do you have any data to show? Yeah, do you have data that shows that they're being negatively impacted by their ability to choose?
I mean, I don't have data on me. Like I've already told you the Bumble and I mean the Tinder statistics
Yeah,
on
but
how
that statistic just
That's
says
not-
that women are being more, and actually, if anything, it's showing that those women are more intentional and more specific about the people that, and choosy about the people that they want to spend their time with. And if I'm using your logic, it's honestly a little bit what's the word that you were using? It's a word that I hate that begins with a P. Promiscuous
Promiscuity?
of these men to just, yeah, it's really promiscuous of them to have 90% swiping yes. Because are they even reading the profiles? Are they even looking at that person saying, this could be a wife? No, they're not. They're trying to get, as someone I know has said recently, they're Peter wet.
The reason why men swipe right most of the time is because for us, it's a numbers game. Back in the day when I first started using dating apps, before the whole swipe left and right thing, you could message any woman you were interested in. During my innocent youth, I'd craft these really witty first messages because that's what all the girls said they wanted on their profiles. And you know what? As your average looking guy, my response rate was low. Obviously, I wasn't going to continue wasting my time doing that just to not get a response. So the quality of my messages dropped and the number of girls I messaged increased, which ultimately worked out much better for me. Guys swipe right on pretty much every profile because they have to, and if they land a match with someone they like, they can move on to the next step, which is seeing if they're actually interested in the person. Now, I've never been a woman on a dating app, so I don't know what that experience is like. But what I can tell you is, many guys have learned to navigate the world of dating apps just as I did.
That sounds
No, I
promiscuous
mean,
to me.
I think you're denigrating men there like way too much. I mean,
I
I do
literally
think
used
men
your
do want to.
logic. I literally used
She's
exactly
using your logic and turning it back on you.
and turned, yeah. I used exactly your logic.
Why? Because men swipe on most women. That's a bad thing.
You are saying that women are promiscuous and it's making women upset and you're worried about the well-being of women. And then you also in the same breath are saying that they are only swiping right on 10% of the profiles that they see. So
Jake, is your complaint
Exactly.
that women aren't
possible?
swiping on? Do you want women to swipe on more men? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like what's the solve here?
Well, here's the thing. Like first off, women do want to sleep with the highest quality man available.
Why would they sleep with
what
low
does that even
quality
mean?
people? Why would
what does that even mean?
But the problem is
women want to sleep with
men.
women want to sleep. Hey Jake, women want to sleep with the man they want to sleep with.
I think that's a bit of a non-answer because it's a given that men and women want to sleep with who they want to sleep with. The more important question is, why do women choose the men they choose? But let's go with this 10% thing for a second. If there are 20 people in a room, 10 men and 10 women, and 10 of the women want to get with the one guy, because in this case, that'd be 10%. What will usually happen is that he'll sleep with all of them because he can, and perhaps settle on one, leaving the rest of the women to lower their standards so they can find a mate and not have to sleep alone at night. This, of course, is a very exaggerated and extreme example, but I think that's what the caller was getting at.
That's it.
No, but the problem is, I'll tell you the problem. The problem is these men that they're sleeping with are not going to commit to them at all. And
but you're saying they're high value men or whatever. So why wouldn't they commit?
Yeah, they're high value men, and they have so many options because 90% are swiping right on them that they have no reason. Sorry?
Promiscuous, I fear. Promiscuous, I fear. Because they have all of these options and they can. So actually, the problem is not the women.
10%
It's
of
the
men
men
have
that
all
don't
these
want to
options.
commit. It's the.
No.
Okay, so then the rest of
they
the
have
90,
no reason
so then the
to
rest of the
commit.
90%, the rest of the 90% should figure their shit out and figure out what the difference is. I'm confused about what.
The funny thing is, if all those guys did sort their shit out, wouldn't the bar of what it means to be in the top 10% just be higher? Meaning that women will still select for those guys.
What you think?
Yeah, can you summarize your point in like one sentence for us? What are you trying to say here? Like women should swipe on more men, or women are too picky or men are swiping on too many women? Can you just summarize for me in one sentence?
Women are all swiping the same guys, and those same guys are not committing to them, and they're sleeping with them because they have so many options. So women end up getting heartbroken because of this, because these guys cannot commit to them. And that is harmful
Again,
for
where is your
women in
data?
the long term.
Because
That's their responsibility also. That's their responsibility. If they want to put themselves out there and they want to get heartbroken, they are grown women. They're grown people. They will, guess what? Get a therapist, which many of these high value, whatever the fuck men you're talking about, I guarantee don't. These women are going to get a therapist and they're going to figure it out and not make it everybody else's problem.
That sounds good and all, but in reality, that's not what I've seen happen. More often than not, what I see are women, and sometimes men, hung up on this one person they were in a situationship with. And when they get with someone new, they're constantly comparing the two. In some instances, if that person they were in a situationship with hops into their DMs, they'd be more than happy to entertain it, even if they're currently in a relationship. It's not rare for things that happened in the past to creep into the future, which is why you always have to be careful about who you start building a life with and invest your time into.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. If you think that women should suffer because of it, I'm okay with that.
They're not suffering. They're having fun.
Women aren't suffering. Women are actually living their best lives when they get to do that. Where's your data on that? This is just your opinion. And you just sound like personally perturbed that women aren't picking from the bottom of the barrel and you're using your own
no, I'm not perturbed. I mean, like, it is what it is. I can't change what women choose to want to be with.
Let me give you your argument back to you. This is what you're saying. You're saying, I think it's wrong that women only want the guys that they deem as worthy to sleep with. I think they should pick from some of the guys that they don't really like. That's what you're saying.
No, but here's the problem. I'll tell you the problem. They're choosing these men thinking that they can get into a long-term relationship with them.
How do you know that they're thinking that?
And also, why do you think that they think that? Do you think it's maybe some of the things that the men are saying to them, perhaps?
I think before they even started talking about how the guys in the top 10% are getting most of the attention from women, they should have explored what qualities are typically found in those guys. Typically, though, what people are referring to is a guy who earns quite a bit, is good looking, has a bit of status, and over 6 feet tall. While Eve talked about the caller being upset because women aren't picking guys from the bottom of the barrel, I kind of think that was a bit unfair, as the lowering of standards doesn't mean you are picking a terrible guy. Maybe it's a guy who's just a little shorter, doesn't earn 6 figures, and probably doesn't have much status. This doesn't make him a terrible person, and in fact, this guy could make for a wonderful partner, if given the chance. I think the caller was advocating for the fact that these guys shouldn't be so easily overlooked, for what people refer to as the Chad. Even though I've said all that, as I often say, when dealing with women in the real world and not through online dating, you'll find that a lot of women are pretty fine with getting into relationships or hooking up with an average guy, so you shouldn't let these extreme examples you see online determine your perception of women. While there are plenty of truths to the things you'll hear from people in the red pill space, the reality is, life isn't so black and white.
I mean, why would how is a woman gonna raise a child and
not every woman wants to raise a child. And not every woman, especially like when they're in their 20s or whatever, that's not a priority to everyone.
I think for most women it is, and like it might not be a priority for you, but I think most women it is.
I will fully agree with the caller on this one. And while what Alyssa said is true about women in their 20s not really being interested in having kids and starting a family, when many women get into their mid to late 30s, they often have a change of heart, some even regretting the fact that they didn't get started earlier. In my own life, I've had female friends who've contemplated doing some pretty extraordinary things to get pregnant. Some may even call it baby trapping.
Like, I think most women want to be in a committed relationship.
Show us your data. Show us your data for that. And also show me the data that shows that women aren't getting in committed relationships.
Mankind,
that's not
like
data.
Since the beginning of mankind.
Even if that's true, that women want to have monogamous partners and they want to have kids, why shouldn't they go for people that they're interested in? to be able to form that family later on. They have to go for
They
people that
are
they're not
going for-
interested in.
I think if the caller stuck to just one topic for this, they could have really just explored that one thing, because now it just feels like they're talking past each other. While Alyssa's right in saying that women should have the right to go for whoever they want, I think what the caller was getting at is that there's a selection of men who have so many options that it won't be easy for them to settle. And by chasing men like this, women who are seeking connections and long-term relationships with these guys are unlikely to get it.
Like, a lot of these apps are very deceptive because they're showing women, okay, like, here's this really hot guy, right? And a lot of women, like I said, they think they can actually start something with these men, but the guys end up just humping and dumping, right? And like,
Yeah, but
a lot of
that
guys
is the
have done
Where
it.
are you
Right.
getting this from? Where are you
And
getting this from?
That's also, if that's true,
Like-
that means that the guy is the one who is having sex with them and then getting rid of them, when a woman had, from this story, that when a woman had intentions of something else. So what is the solve for the woman?
Well, this is where it gets tricky for women, and they have to understand how guys move and what their true intentions are for any given situation. While it'd be impossible to always be correct about this sort of thing, you could greatly increase your chances of not getting played. I've had female friends in the past get into certain situations with guys, thinking they were building towards something, but oftentimes, after meeting them, it was clear as day that most of these guys just wanted to blow off some steam, then move on to the next.
What's the solve for her? What is she supposed to do? If she is only
Supposed to
picking a
lower her
selective
standards like a little bit.
That's it.
You
That's
want
what I
women to
was
lower
waiting
their
for.
standards. Thank you for
That's what I was
thank you for
waiting
admitting
for.
it. Holy shit.
Yeah, but I want
Why would they
women
do
to
that?
lower their
Why would they
So-
lower
so that
their
they can
standards?
actually get into a committed relationship with them.
Lowering your standards doesn't have to be a bad thing, depending on what you're talking about, of course, but neither the hosts or the caller defined what those standards are. Lowering of a standard could be, while you have the hots for guys who are over 6 feet, why not give someone who's 5'9" a chance?
Jake,
That's wild.
you're advocating instead of this is so fucked up, and I'm so glad you're revealing yourself on the internet, because you are advocating for women to lower their standards instead of for men
For what?
to act and behave better. That is fucked up and disgusting.
No, but you have like 10% of guys. They're literally
It is
10% of guys. They have
fucked up
all the
and
women they can
disgusting
choose
that
from.
it is fucked up and
Why would
disgusting.
why would
that
those
instead
10% of guys
advocating,
commit?
I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you because I'm in the middle of a sentence. It is fucked up and disgusting that you are advocating for women to lower their standards instead of advocating for these apparently 90% of men to not maybe get their shit together and act better. That is,
Also,
I
also
don't
you're-
even know
you're
how you've
asking-
convinced yourself to do that.
So, the 90% of men she's talking about, saying they should just get their shit together, was a bit insensitive. Just because a man isn't in the top 10% of what women deem attractive, it doesn't mean he's worthless. Most people are just average, living average lives, doing average things. The only reason this 10% thing has become an issue is because the world of dating has sort of become a global thing. Being in the top 10% of men in your area may have been great back in the day, but when you're competing for matches on platforms like Tinder, you're being pitted against the top 10% of guys in whatever country you're in.
you're also asking the women to lower their standards because the 10%
Wait.
upper echelon is treating them like
You're
garbage.
still talking?
How does that make
Okay.
sense? How does it make sense that they're going to
Okay,
lower
hear
their
me out.
standards if the upper
No.
10% didn't treat them right?
And this is what I keep going on about, because they didn't clarify their terms about what standards should be lowered or what it means to be a 10% guy. It's like they're not even talking about the same thing. From what I understand, being in the top 10% has nothing to do with how nice or mean you are to women. It's all to do with how much you're desired by women due to your income, status, and physical attraction. If a woman chose to date a guy who fell into the 90% category, it doesn't mean they're going to end up with a guy who mistreats or doesn't love them. It'd just be a guy who doesn't have as much appeal as the top 10%, and naturally, a guy who would have far fewer options when it comes to finding love or just hooking up.
That makes no sense. So I'm going to lower my standards. I'm going to shoot lower than the best of the best to hopefully get a better result. That doesn't make sense. The reason that this is like so insane to me is because by this whole what you're if the world is the way that you're describing it, the actual solve is that these men need to figure out how to be monogamous. Not the women, not the promiscuous women, it's the promiscuous men. They're the ones who are pumping and dumping, like you said, or just picking everybody. And like, I'm shocked that you're not hearing it. I'm just baffled.
For me, this is why it's important to acknowledge that men and women aren't the same. How we see and operate in the world is wildly different, and our innate desires and instincts also differ, and they're not always compatible with each other. While in an ideal world, it'd help women and most men if the top 10% of guys were monogamous, more often than not, that's just not the case. I mean, this is just something you can read up on Wikipedia, so I don't think it carries much bias. Sexual selection theory states that because of their lower minimum parental investment, men can achieve greater reproductive success by mating with multiple women than women can achieve by mating with multiple men. Evolutionary psychologists, therefore, argue that ancestral men who possessed a desire for multiple short-term sex partners, to the extent that they were capable of attracting them, would have left more descendants than men without such a desire. Ancestral women, by contrast, would have maximized reproductive success not by mating with as many men as possible, but by selectively mating with those men who were most able and willing to invest resources in their offspring. Even though this little snippet is talking about ancient times, despite how we're living in the modern day, our biology and psychology hasn't really changed since then, and may not do so for thousands of years, which would require us to continue living in a safe and stable environment.
I'm going to take him off on mute now. If he's still talking, then I'm dropping the call. Let's see what's happening.
Okay, hello? Yes,
you're back on.
Okay, so I do think that these top tier guys should actually get into monogamous relationships with women. It's just that it's the reason why they don't is because they just have so many options not to, right?
So they should just fuck around
I do
because
think there
they
is
have the option to fuck around. And also, these women that are picking 10%. 90% of the men are also swiping right on them. So they also have tons and tons of options.
Yeah, they are swiping right, but I can promise you that the vast majority of them aren't having any success, so they're not able to land themselves in a situation in which they can hook up with a woman or get into a relationship.
Because everyone's swiping on them, regardless of their quality.
No, but they're not swiping right. Women aren't swiping right back, so they're not actually matching with those guys.
Okay, I guess
They're
it
only
depends on the
swiping
app
right
that
on the
you're
10%
using.
of guys. No, like pretty much every app out there is like that.
Well, I think on like it's been a while since I've been on an app, but I think on like Hinge you can maybe it's like a premium thing where you can see who already swiped on you. But anyways, doesn't really matter. Anyway, proceed.
But I mean, it is like we have to understand that it is in male nature to sleep with lots of women.
Nope.
To procreate, right?
Nope.
It kind of is, though, and the little snippet I pulled of Wikipedia talked about the same thing. But here's another little snippet from Oxford University. In most animal species, the costs associated with reproduction differ between the sexes. Females often benefit most from producing high-quality offspring, while males often benefit from mating with as many females as possible. As a result, males and females have evolved profoundly different adaptations to suit their own reproductive needs. Now, with that being said, women are also known to sleep with a larger pool of men to increase their chances of getting pregnant, which is kind of where we fall into the world of cuckolding.
Sure it is. Like if you have
listen to me.
if you have one guy.
It's also in our human nature that when we feel like our home is threatened to fucking kill each other, and it's still illegal.
It's not illegal though. Well, depending on where you live, I guess. But for a lot of places, if someone breaks into your home and you feel threatened, maybe even scared for your life, you're allowed to use lethal force. While this can be a little gray sometimes, it's not outright illegal.
We have the benefit of moral conscience. So Men are not dragging their knuckles on the ground, swinging their dick at anything that moves. That's just not reality. And then you're giving them a free pass that they're allowed to just
I'm not giving them a free pass, though. I'm not. I'm just explaining, like, no, I'm not. I'm explaining how it is. I'm explaining, like, what the situation is.
That's not reality. That's not true, Jake. It's not true.
So yeah, she's right. Men aren't acting like animals, and our brains have developed to such a degree in which we can challenge and overcome a lot of our desires. But given the option, I'd argue that most men would love to sleep with multiple women. But the truth is, most men aren't able to exercise that option.
It's not true. And even if that were true, we're just supposed to allow men to
wait, what's not true?
That men can't control their sexual urges. They
anything
can.
you've said tonight.
Well, they are.
Men have just as much ability to control their sexual urges as anyone else.
Yeah, men can control their sexual urges, but if they had the ability to sleep with a lot of women, a lot of guys would, at least for a period of time.
Period.
I do think men like want to, have sex more than women do, but
you started this call saying
you're
that
right.
the
It's
women,
not an excuse. It's not an excuse.
You started this call saying that the women were being promiscuous, and now you're saying
but
that
they are.
See, just because a lot of men have high sex drives and would love to hook up with streams of women, it doesn't mean they can.
They're sleeping with 10% of guys. And then you have 10% of guys who are also promiscuous.
They're sleeping with I'm sorry. They are swiping on 10% of people.
And sleeping with. Let's be real. If you're swiping on 10% of guys, you're most likely going to be hooking up with
Jake,
them.
Maybe that's how you do the apps.
I don't know about that.
No,
maybe that's how you do the apps, babe. That's not how that works.
You need to bring data for us. Here's my problem that I'm still hung up on, and why I don't even know why we kept you on the call. You presented a case basically saying that that women are being made victims, and instead of advocating for men to treat them better, you're advocating for women to lower their standards so that they're okay with being in shittier or being in relationships with people that they don't want to fucking be with. And that is,
I don't know why you're putting words in my mouth.
Again, just because a guy isn't deemed as being in the top 10%, it doesn't make him a shitty person.
That's literally what you said.
I don't have to do it. We can go back and watch the call. That is what you said. So you said women should lower their standards. We can have a clip. Somebody should get the clip and add it in here. And you said women need to lower their standards.
Yes, I do think. Okay, just hear me out. I do think women need to lower their standards, but I also think those top 10% of guys who are being promiscuous should also commit to women as well, right? Like I'm advocating for responsibility on both sides.
Responsibility. Women should, if anything, all that you've made it clear here is that women should raise their standards. That we shouldn't even be fucking the 10% of guys on these apps.
Eve is right. I wouldn't say women need to raise their standards. Instead, I'd say, if a woman is after something long-term, she shouldn't expect to find it in a guy who's a part of the top 10%. And as a matter of fact, I'm in the middle of watching Love is Blind right now, and many of the women on that show who are in their early to mid-30s used to chase those super desirable guys. But as they got older, they eventually realized that nothing was ever going to come of those situations. While I wouldn't say they lowered their standard, they did change them and are now trying to focus on a man's qualities that are better suited for long-term and fulfilling relationships. But yeah, I'm going to end the video here. And if you want to see more videos like this, I'll leave a link to their channel in the description, as they're certainly worth checking out. If you have any thoughts on this, feel free to share them in the comments.